see that sheriff's face right now. That chicken range is gonna get it in the neck. And Miss Mona, she's gonna get hers too.
Just spent a week in Texas living with real life Texans, doing Texan sort of stuff, going to fast food places, shooting guns, all that shit. So I wanted to come back and straight away get stuck into a Texan film. I was trying to think back on any Texan films I actually knew. There's obviously some obvious ones. Didn't want to go for an obvious one. This film just kind of came to my mind. I remember watching about a good hour of it right in the middle. Didn't catch the beginning, didn't quite catch the end. But I remember finding it weirdly charming. Didn't remember it being a musical. And to be honest, even watching it this time, I would go through about 10-15 minute periods where I would be enjoying the film and then suddenly a bunch of football players in the changing room after a game would start dancing and singing. And I'd be like, oh yeah, it's a musical. I kind of forgot because it didn't feel very musically. It felt kind of cobbled together. So it surprised me to find that it was actually based on a musical that ran for many years, won a lot of awards, and was itself actually based on a real life event.
I didn't realise it was a musical either. I was watching it and they started singing. And if I'm honest, my heart dropped slightly because I think I've said it before, would be above horrors as my least favourite genre.
Because I got to be honest, like I said, I totally forgot it was a musical. And as I was watching it, as the first song came in and I remembered, oh, and this was a musical that whole time, I did think of you watching this for the first time and probably being a bit annoyed as you sat down to watch it that you didn't even get a warning beforehand.
No, do you know what, Declan? Like, what I like about your suggestion is this isn't a film that I would like ever suggest to like watch. And like, I like to broaden my horizons. I like to watch all things. And like, I was like shuddering around like, no, not a musical. But I thought, let me get this started and let me see what's happening. So I gave it a go, but yeah, I was fidgeting a little bit. I'm not gonna...
Yeah, because definitely for me anyway, the songs are the worst part of it. And whenever they came up, I didn't hate them. Like, some of them were good songs. I was kind of just waiting for them to be done. Sometimes a film's appealing on the basis that it's formulaic, because maybe it's, you know, it's an action film that's hitting all the beats you want it to hit. And other times, saying like a drama, there's certain just moments where you've seen so many times before, and or moments where you're like, okay, I know this needs to happen to get to the next bit, so let it just happen. But you're just kind of waiting for them to be done, and it was nearly like that. I was just waiting for these moments to come and go so it could get back to the actual film, and it really felt out of place. Like, other than those moments, it didn't feel like a musical to me, not in the conventional sense.
I'm gonna put it out there right now. There's one song I really liked, The Searching Around.
Books and dominoes, football games and Cheerios. Said sneaking around with you,
Sneaking around with you, going around that too, doing what lovers do whenever they're sneaking around.
Remind me.
So I'm not going to sing.
Get up and do a jig.
I was very intrigued to see the most famous moustache ever in film, Burt Reynolds, turns up. So I was thinking, when I realised it was a musical, how's this going to work? Because I didn't know that he could sing, or I'd never seen him sing in other stuff.
Yeah, I'm still not sure if he can.
I don't think he can, but...
No, but it's also, that's kind of, people get a pass in musicals. It's kind of, especially when it's a film adaptation and you might pull in someone like, say, Christopher Walken in Hairspray, where it's more about the fact that you're getting the actor in, and as they, you know, clumsily talk through their lyrics in whatever song they get to do, you kind of just accept, like, yeah, it's, you know, one or two of the people aren't going to be able to sing. As long as you've got a Dolly Parton in the lead role, you're going to get away with it.
We get simple farmers, local businessmen, Congress folks from Austin, young boys looking for sin. Now we used to get a lot of roughnecks when the oil boom was high, but payday'd get a little rowdy. Thank God the field run dry.
Later on, where Dolly Parton and Burt Reynolds are in Dolly Parton's room, it's like, we've been running around, and I was like, oh, this is a pretty catchy little jig, actually.
Are you talking about when they first meet up to fight?
Yeah.
See, that's what I love about this film as well, because it creates a universe of that sort of stereotypical Texan mindset. It's kind of the same as the Western mindset in certain ways, like when Leone in Once Upon a Time in the West, the way some of the dialogue some of the characters have about the idea of being a prostitute or being, you know, a great prostitute kind of prostitute that gets talked about from town to town in this romanticized sort of way. And it's that same sort of concept where everyone's chill with this whorehouse being in town and everyone's having affairs. You know, one old lady at one point says like,
Why, they attract a lot of business to the community. They pay their taxes, just like you and me. No one was ever forced to go up there.
My Frank, when he was alive, used to go up there every Saturday. I took it as a blessing. Of course, things were different then. Nowadays, women enjoy doing that sort of thing themselves. At least so I've been told.
Burt Reynolds is our hero. Dolly Parton's our hero. Both their characters are having an affair. And it's hinted it's an affair, but you don't really even get clarification of the fact that Burt Reynolds is married and has a family and children until later on in the film. And it's just this fleeting shot of him in his house. You know, I think he's watching a game and he's starts celebrating, so he gives his young son a beer and his wife is just sort of in the kitchen working away. But I just love the fact that it's a film in the 80s set in the 50s. The sense of morality and fun of it, it's nearly kind of like that whole French idea of it's okay to have a mistress, everyone does it sort of thing, you know, that whole sort of subculture. Like the heroes you're following are both having an affair the whole time. One's a whorehouse, one's, you'd argue by letter of the law, a corrupt sheriff who's allowing it to continue, who's having an affair, but they're portrayed as your heroes that you love and that you're rooting for the whole time. There's no even sense of, you know, like film usually it would like have a moment where it's like he tries to be a good husband but she's mean or whatever the fuck. It doesn't give you a second of that. It just is 100% righteous about the way it sees it.
Yeah, I think that's testament to like Reynolds and Dolly Parton's charisma in the role, because, you know, morally they're not very nice people, as you said, but I just couldn't hate them. Like I like Dolly Parton anyway. Like
You love Dolly
I love Dolly Parton anyway. Like, and I was, you know, to tell the truth, like I was watching a film. I was like, she was a bit of a stunner back in the day.
I mean, she was even more beautiful before this. This is once she'd already had a shitload of plastic surgery. See, the thing about Dolly Parton is she is 100% white trash. And I mean that with a love and affection and the most literal sense of the word. Like, I don't mean trashy personality or trashy behavior, but she just, it's like, she was, you know, the way people talk about, yeah, I grew up poor, you know, my parents, we didn't have much for Christmas, but they'd always come through and get a few presents. Dolly Parton grew up where they'd have to mix dirt in with the porridge to feed all the kids. Like, she grew up, you know, that poverty you see around, like, when you grow up, you're white, but you're growing up around a mountain in the middle of America, and you're a high flyer if you don't fuck your brother. Like that, those sort of places. She grew up so dirt poor and so ignorant and so, you know, didn't know how to read. That's a big part of why her charity that she pushes all the time is teaching children to read, because that was her life. So the moment she talks about herself, like the moment she got any money, she was like, well, I'm just going to get big boobs and big lips and fucking go mental and like do all that trashy, you know, it's like when you see sort of gypsy weddings here in the UK, that's what they go for. It's the same sort of mentality. They're not bad people, you know, I'm sure some of them are, but they're not inherently bad people. Sometimes they're some of the loveliest people you ever meet, but they just have this old school, weird, tacky aesthetic that they aspire to. And you see that at this point in Dolly Parton's career, where she's just fucking got these huge, big jumbo knockers knocking about. And we get to see a pretty good sight of them in one of the early scenes where we see Burt Reynolds and her going at it.
Fucking weird scene, to be honest. He's trying to make Burt Reynolds get into like these fucking Borat kind of budgie smugglers.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want to do it because it's like crushing marbles in a sock or something.
No, it's jockey shorts with little silver snaps on the side.
Little is a key word here.
He gets them on and he just like runs to the bed, and I'm like, this is a fucking surreal as anything.
Yeah, because it's funny, because when I was reading up on it, the original writer apparently was pissed with a lot of the additions, which included the fact that Dolly Parton's character, Mona, and Sheriff Ed were never even meant to be love interests, which is funny because it's kind of hard to imagine the film without that. I guess it's a bit like the Chewbacca thing, where hard to imagine Star Wars without Chewbacca, but if you took him out of the story, you wouldn't have to change one bit of the plot. Technically, you wouldn't need to do it in this either, but it's sort of the heart of the film for me, so it's hard to imagine it not having that love story. But at the same time as well, it makes sense because these sort of additions throughout the film are quite bizarre. You can imagine if you're a writer, if they change something as important as like the fact that the two main characters now are in love with each other, but also add in these bizarre moments where like she's trying to get him to wear a jock strap and it's happening within the first 10 minutes, you'd probably be pretty fucking livid too.
I really liked their chemistry, actually. I wondered, were they fucking in real life? Because the chemistry was really good, man, I thought.
Yeah, I have no idea if they were fucking in real life, but I do know that it wasn't inherently important to her that these two characters should have a romantic interest or be having it off with each other the whole whole time. It was more the fact that once Burt Reynolds was cast, she felt that their chemistry was good enough where it would be missing out not to take that approach. So I don't know if they were actually fucking, but she definitely felt like there was a chemistry there. But you imagine if there's any kind of romantic chemistry, I mean, surely that must on some level come from a real attraction in real life. Like, what do actors even mean when there was a chemistry between two leads in a romantic film? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it has happened before. Like, it's pretty well known that Margot Robbie and Will Smith like fucked each other.
Really? I didn't know that.
In that whatever film they were in, like that hit
con man film, yeah.
Hitch or whatever it was called. Anyway, it was rubbish. So they fucked each other. So it does happen, Declan. And sometimes I do think that, like, and then you'll see later there was a big rumor, obviously, about Bradley Cooper and Gaga in Star Is Born.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I do reckon they also sometimes intentionally hint at it just to create a bit of controversy or interest to drum up some buzz for the film. But yeah, I mean, if you get two beautiful, talented, good-looking, delusional people and have them work really close together in a job where you spend all your time together and then occasionally have to kiss each other or pretend you're in love, like, of course it's bound to happen a lot of time. But anyway, this isn't a film about real love. It's more of about a film about love you pay for, because this is all about a whorehouse. Not legal in Texas, but in this little town, it's kind of just a culturally accepted thing and nearly like a beloved tradition. And I love that idea of just the fact that people just don't mind it. Not only don't mind it, but they really respect Miss Mona's character. She's a respectable person in town. She gives to everyone, likes her. She's charismatic. She seems like a genuine nice person that cares about other people, gives to charity, pays her taxes, and just happens to be running a brothel.
The chicken ranch? I think it's a good idea. So you take a lot of young boys and they're going to be out there looking for women. If they can't find them, they'll rape them. And if they don't do that, they'll run to other women and get diseases. Those girls went to doctors.
I got the vibes about Mona's character. She seemed like a genuine nice person. And obviously the whorehouse had been there for like many, many years. She took it over because she was the best working girl from the previous owner. So I guess it's so ingrained in the furniture. Oh, that's been there for years. Like, don't mind that. But you know what I mean? As long as it's not, it's on the outskirts of town, so it's not affected the people going to church and stuff like that. So they're like...
And having been to one of these little towns very recently in Texas, it was a town of like 5,000 people. The whole universe in a town like that surrounds about certain things, like, the local high school football team. So much of the culture revolves around institutions like that, or just the high school itself, and they're very important. If you took them away, it'd kind of be like lockdown during COVID. Like you're stealing away a whole thing that makes the whole population tick. Emotionally, they get that sense of community, longing, and human contact scratched by this means, and taking it away would genuinely mess with people's heads. It would generally affect people's mental health and happiness, and that's the vibe I got from this brothel. It meant something to people, and it was a part of the town. It was wrapped up in their other institutions, like the high school football team, where if they won a certain game every year, it was tradition to take all the boys out to the whorehouse, and the local mayor, or whoever the fuck it was, guy with a cowboy hat who looked important, would treat them all to a night in the brothel. The crux of the film is the fact that Dom DeLuise is playing a reporter who's moved in from New Jersey to Texas because, as he says himself, Texas suits his style, which I think was a way of him saying that he thinks people in Texas are stupid and he can play on their fears of stuff. Burt Reynolds, his sheriff, heads on over to the news station to try and talk to him, because he wants to talk to him man to man and just explain to him that we'd appreciate if you just left it alone.
The point I'm trying to make is that every schoolboy in the state knows about it. Most of the politicians have slept there. And the mayor and the people in my county that voted for me, they want to keep things just the way they are.
His response is to basically bamboozle him and ambush him live on air, reveal that there's a whorehouse in Texas, point his cameras over to the unexpecting Sheriff Ed, and demand answers of why is this going on, which obviously pisses off Burt Reynolds.
Notice straight away the fucking bowl haircut. Like, what's this hair about? Like, in these films, like, there's always some characters that are like bordering on learning difficulties level, like he is, and also the deputy sheriff. Like, it's like from the Scary Movie, like fucking Dewey when he's dragging along the Hoover, like, don't come in here kind of level. But I kind of thought it was pretty cool the way that I guess he acts like that, to be like, I am an idiot, kind of like Louis Theroux kind of style. I don't understand, but it's clear you do understand, to kind of like let people drop their guard so he can win the day.
Which he does literally in that scene, so you probably have a point. I also think it's funny how in cinema history, especially Hollywood history, there's two kind of villains. There's generally the foreign villain, who's either usually German or English, or there's like the subtly gay villain that you don't really see anymore. And he definitely falls into the latter category where, you know, it never comes right out and says it, but he essentially is an incredibly camp character who's like constantly running about and mincing about, I'd say, acting gay. And it is a funny thing how that was, you don't see it anymore, but that was such a common trope with villains or just odd characters in general, like Lost in Space, that old TV show, you know, the big gay weird uncle who's always going off with the boy.
Could you say Doctor Strange though? Because his character was pretty camp in a lot of ways.
Which one are you talking about? Because he was German as well, wasn't he? He falls into both camps by that category.
Just like the way he dressed and like, you know, the professor vibe and like the gloves and...
Do you know what? You've kind of stumped me there because he really could be both.
I always thought that a little bit about Hans Gruber in Die Hard. Like,
what, you thought he was camp?
Not camp, but Rickman's character. Like, Alan Rickman's was quite known for it. The way he acted was quite eccentric and bombastic. Like, so I didn't know about that. But again, Germans.
Yeah. Always those Germans, those pesky Germans.
If they're not putting their towels down first, they're doing that. But yeah, I thought, back to your point, I thought it set it up really well because straight away Declan, I kind of clocked as like the audience member, the watcher, like the way he was like really swami and like, oh, come in, sit down. Like he would be the villain of the piece. So I thought it was very good direct.
In real life, the reporter that this was based on was really unhappy with his portrayal in the film. And not just because he was portrayed by like a sort of bumbling retard, but it was partly because he felt like it was misrepresented why he wanted to shut the whorehouse down. Supposedly, he was more worried about its many ties to organized crime and the fact that a lot of organized crime ultimately was getting organized there. Like it was becoming a meetup. Supposedly, this is what he claims. Maybe more retrospectively, I'd have to look into it more. But he was disappointed in the fact that it was made out that he was purely just a charlatan. But, you know, it's a film and you need a villain. It's a musical, so you need a pantomime villain. And that it was always going to end up being that character. So what are we going to do?
I thought they would have like it being Texas, where you were just there, by the way. I don't know, I'm making assumptions here. Like every time I've seen it portrayed in film, it's either two different avenues. It's either the ones that love the whorehouse or the ones who hate it were like, this is against God's law. Like, do you know what I mean? So I thought it would be that element. But the whole organised crime thing, I guess if he was telling the truth in real life, he was doing the right thing.
It's interesting as well because you don't hear accounts that disagree or clash with what he claims, but apparently the head of the whorehouse that Miss Mona and Dolly Parton's character is based on was actually incredibly cooperative with the police. Gang members would come after committing crimes sometimes, or maybe they'd be gloating to the girls and they'd talk about crimes they'd committed, and she would immediately the next day or that night grass them up to the local sheriff and feed information to him. Apparently at one point she even had a direct line that led straight to the sheriff's phone. So kind of wondering like who's telling the truth, was it the fact that this reporter just saw it that whether she's feeding information or not, this still shouldn't be going on. So who knows? Everyone has reasons to be projecting a certain version of events that makes themselves look better, and I can't be bothered to research it enough to actually find out who's telling the truth. So I'd rather just talk about the film.
Someone is committing you know what, and it must stop.
Loveless copulation.
Stop that copulation.
Loveless copulation.
Stop that copulation.
Texas has a whorehouse in it.
Yeah, so Dom DeLuise's evil reporter dude comes to town and makes a big song and dance quite literally about, you know, this town is corrupt and there's a whorehouse and this is terrible and morality and God and blah, blah, blah and middle America and good old American values. How can we be doing this? And he confronts the sheriff and accuses the sheriff of taking bribes, and he is having none of it. Burt Reynolds is pissed. He starts backing him into the corner. He does the old firstly, secondly, thirdly bullshit and ends with literally shooting his gun up in the air and scaring the whole camera crew out of town. Which, as far as the whole town are looking on, they're loving it. They're like, oh, that's like, you know, they're looking at it like, what a model sheriff we've got. Thank God we've got to go sort shit out. But the problem is, you know, this is the 50s when TV was a new thing. And I guess the sheriff didn't really bargain on the fact that was all being filmed, and his behavior and pretty reckless shooting into the air and in the middle of a crowded people was going to be shown on TV all throughout the nation and make him look very bad.
Does it work for you in my town again? I'm gonna knock you so flat you...
Ed Earl, that man has made a fool out of you.
It's funny, man, because like thinking about it now in 2023, everything you do could possibly like be a viral like, meme. Like, remember a succulent Chinese meal? He didn't know that would go viral like these many years later. Like, but at the end of the day, then you can't just be like, as a sheriff, shooting guns into the air.
No, it's pretty wet mental.
It's like, come on, man, like. That, and this made me laugh as well, because remember at the start of the film, I'm going to call him Deputy Dewey, simply because he reminds me of the guy from the Scary Movie. I know that's not his name.
What a shit character.
But he's like, Sheriff Ed always says that talking can solve most arguments, and then later on he's shooting his gun in the air. Like, no, he doesn't.
Do you know what's so funny? I think my brain blocked him out of existence. I fucking hated that character. What a worthless character. Just a complete... I think I know what they were going for, like the endearing dumbass, but I tend to never like those characters in any... You know, there's always one in a sitcom, sometimes one in a film, but I just fucking hate it. And why was he narrating?
To be fair, they didn't really, like, in respect to the director, they didn't overuse it, because he was only in, like, probably 4 scenes, wasn't he? But even the 4 scenes were both saying,
But again, like Chewbacca, same thing. Take him out of the plot, he's irrelevant. And why is he narrating the film? He's awful.
Yeah.
He was terrible. Why is Dolly Parton not narrating it?
Yeah, that's
I want to see her perspective. I don't want this dimwit fucking extra for some reason getting to frame the whole context of the film.
Yeah, like it was frustrating. Like that did annoy me. Like it's just simply like he didn't serve a purpose, kind of thing. Like and when he did appear, he was just fucking annoying.
Yeah, that's more what it comes down to. As much as I'm bitching about, like, why is he the person narrating? Really, it's just he was shit. If he wasn't shit, if he was funny and likable, he would have been great. But you know, like you could have, if you'd narrated it from Dom DeLuise's point of view, it would have been fine. So the sheriff starts getting a lot of political pressure being put on him from everyone, but he's having none of it. Not only is it the fact that obviously, you know, he's in love with and having an affair with Dolly Parton, who's running it, so he doesn't want to let her down. But he also does believe in the fact that, you know, the whorehouse has been open forever, and like we're not going to let some out of towner come in and shut it down from fancy Dallas or Houston or wherever the fuck he's from. And most of the town seems to be up for that. Most of the town seems to agree, like, nah, like we're not, you know, we like the whorehouse. She's a good woman, you know, they're nice people there. Like, who's this fucking fat weirdo coming out from out of town trying to shut it down? But he comes up with the idea to break in at night and get footage of different whores and the punters going about their business and get a nice recording of all their debauchery so he can send it out to all the screens in the homes of living rooms throughout the country and freak average middle-class Americans out of the fact that there's a whorehouse running around. But his little plan shouldn't work because the day before, Burt Reynolds' character goes to see Dolly Parton and manages to convince her to shut down the whorehouse for a few months.
Just trust me.
You know what burns my ass?
What?
A flame about 3 feet high. Of course, I trust you, you big cowboy, ain't I always?
Mm-hmm.
Like we spoke about before, there's this big tradition when this high school football team wins a certain game at the end of the year, then they're treated by the mayor to a night for all of them in the brothel. They all get a lady each, they get a big party. Even the mayor stays there for a night and fucks a prostitute. And it's supposed to be like a thing that as a high school student who gets into the football team, you look forward to for years. Like it's like a real unofficial but very official tradition. And Dolly Parton realizes after Burt Reynolds left, like, shit, that's the next day. We can't let him down on that day. We can't close. What harm could waiting one more day do?
Yeah, this brings into question, I've totally forgot about another character that does nothing. Like there's some sort of like black lady who's seemingly a cook, and they're like, they just call her names and she does nothing, but she's like, Miss Dolly, you can't shut it down. And I'm like, why is she here? Like,
yeah, she's a Chewbacca. Although, just sorry, before you move on though, from what I read, I got the feeling that she was fairly prominent actually in real life and in running the whorehouse as well. So as much as she feels like your typical token big fat black woman character in these sort of films for the comedic effect, she was actually based on a real person.
I'll allow that then. No,
that's good of you.
I'm happy to accept historically accurate stuff.
Big fat black token woman.
Yeah, I'd rather accept that than they just make up a big fat black token woman. Yeah. So that gets
one of the rare occurrences where it gets a pass.
Yeah, so she convinces Dolly Parton's character to essentially, like, you're going to lose money, so keep it open. And this is when he breaks in, isn't it?
Now, good neighbors, we're about to enter the whorehouse itself. Everybody up! Let's go! All right, come on!
It's so ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, I wanted to like touch on this scene. It does make me a bit angry talking about it right now. I get that Dolly Parton's never seen this guy, but I thought she might have seen him because wasn't there a scene where the deputy sheriff, they're both in the room, like that fuck or whatever, he calls and he's like, turn on the TV because he's talking about you again. And she does, she's in the bed. So I'm certain she's seen this guy. Like I'm certain she's seen this guy somehow, and I'm certain she would have told him or shown all the other prostitutes, don't let this guy in, man. And all of a sudden he's just in there with a camera around his neck, bursting into the rooms.
But to be fair, he breaks in. Like, what are they supposed to do? Once he's in there, they're like, what the fuck? And they're trying to get him out.
You've got a properly run business here. Let's think about it. It's like you've got about 50 whores or so in there. You've got, I'm talking logistics here. You got a piano and all this shit that they do. You couldn't be bothered to like hire a bit of security at the door. So he breaks in with his camera, runs about, barging doors open for about a good 10 minutes, seems, bursting through doors.
It does feel like it turns into a carry-on film for about 5 minutes.
It does. It's like there's like a Sid, what's his name, James character, like woo in the bed, like all of a sudden doing cocaine. Like, oh, sorry, Jack, I'm getting excited. All of a sudden doing coke. We've never seen anyone doing coke before. It just seems to be they're doing it then when this guy breaks in. So
which is a funny thing as well, because this is an R-rated film, and it just doesn't feel like an R-rated film. Like, I suppose at the time, 1980s, this was probably pretty racy. This was probably a bit controversial. Maybe not controversial, but it probably would have earned its R rating. But nowadays, it just feels like a silly PG film with the occasional drug use and tits.
100%. As you said, I think the carry-on.
But yeah, it's a carry-on.
Yeah, it's like everyone jumping out and seeing nudity, but not nudity to shock us now, like behind the bush or something.
And you are right, Dolly Parton's character is kind of pretty limp in this scene, because I was expecting a moment where she gets a shotgun out, and as Dom DeLuise's reporter guy is saying some barb or rude thing against her, she shoots into the air and freaks him out and he runs off. But she kind of just walks out with her shotgun, keeps walking out, and then he's already driving off and she just stands there with a shotgun. And then Burt Reynolds' sheriff shows up and he throws his hat down on the ground like, what the fuck?
You've just been to Texas. Is it like a law of like if something happens? I'm going back to The Simpsons again, where he like has that glove and he keeps slapping everyone and going, jewel me. Like, is it like if you go to a restaurant and your food's cold, they just whip out a gun, shoot it?
No, they throw their hat like Odd Job.
The whole law system in this film seems to be shoot your gun in the air, the people will run off and deal with it another day.
So obviously it's very civilized and modern now and all that, but in the sense of like the general social policing that goes on in any sort of place, you know, that like social etiquette sort of policing, it still very much is that vibe.
People walking around with like cowboy hats on, with like their guns on, showing like my gun's bigger than your gun.
Not so much that, but like you'd walk into homes and they have their handgun on the coffee table next to them while they're having their tea, watching the telly. Pretty fucking cool. It's, yeah, in a great way. Though I loved it.
It sounds very surreal, but very cool.
It was fascinating, man. I got down with the culture. But yeah, so that all kicks off and the whorehouse is shut down. It goes all the way to the governor and he decides to shut it down because, you know, getting all that footage of the whores and the players and all this and all that, it blows up big time on TV, becomes like a national scandal, and they've all got no choice but to shut it all down. So it's all getting shut down, but the sheriff makes one last plea to the governor.
Swearing Sheriff Dodd, the one on TV? No. Hi, Sheriff. Just talking about you. How are you?
Governor?
He drives to the city in an attempt to plead with the governor, played by Charles Durning. Didn't know he could sing or dance, so that was a nice surprise.
Now, my good friends, it behooves me to be solemn and declare I'm for goodness and for profit and for living clean and saying daily prayer. And now, my good friends, you can sleep nights. I'll continue to stand tall. You can trust me, for I promise I shall keep a watchful eye upon you.
But before this, you see over the course of this happening, it puts more and more pressure and strain on him and Dolly Parton's relationship. And it kind of hits the boiling point. It's one of those things where, you know, you're likely to have in an affair that feeling of you're kicking the can down the road, this can't last forever, especially if you both fall in love. You can have that in real relationships, you know, where maybe it's something like the fact that one day, I don't know, maybe you're at uni or college and you know that you're going to move off to different countries afterwards and it's probably not going to last. And there's this sort of feeling of avoidance where you just ignore it, but sometimes it has to, reality slaps you in the face and it's an ugly moment. And I feel like under the stress of the situation, as they realize the whorehouse has to shut down, the sheriff's mad that Dolly Parton didn't listen to him. Dolly Parton feels like Burt Reynolds didn't look after her and look out for her the way he should have, and they snap at each other. He's got this dream that he's going to run for governor or mayor or some political horseshit, and she kind of laughs at him and says, like, you're never going to do that, you're never going to do anything.
And all of your big dreams are going to the legislature. That's all they are, they're just dreams. Because you ain't never gonna be no more than you are right now. A chicken shit sheriff in a chicken shit town.
You may be right. It's a hell of a lot better than being a whore.
And she nearly starts crying. It's quite a sad moment.
I think Dolly Parton's character has been pretty clear throughout the whole film of like, this is like just an arrangement, you got a wife and everything at home, and he's just seeing it as, well, I don't know, he just seems a bit of a dodgy character.
Well, I don't know about that, because she says to him, like, you know, you're the only man I'm with these days. And then he tells her later that I might be married, but you're the only woman I've been with for 3 years. And they're pretty, they do everything but tell each other they love each other. The big black mama who lives in the house with her, whose name I can't remember. The not token black mama. No. She even says to him, like, you know he loves you, you just can't say it.
Is it because the wife is aware that he's fucking, he keeps going to the whorehouse?
Maybe, yeah.
And he's like, she's given him an ultimatum of basically like, either stop going to the little best whorehouse or stay with me. And he's chosen Dolly Parton's character. That we wouldn't.
She's having an affair herself. Like, she's clearly not getting fucked, so maybe she's out fucking someone. Who knows? But anyway, so he tries to speak to the governor, but the governor's not having it. He's like, nope, sorry. He actually comes around to the idea on a personal level.
They're healthy, tax-paying, law-abiding citizens who supply a demand and provide an economic asset to the community.
Whew. Hey, Earl, you ever think about running for office? Huh? Why, I swear, you make that whorehouse sound like a damn non-profit recreational facility.
But a poll from the public comes in saying that just by a small margin, most people are against it. So he's like, fuck it, that's done. It's black and white, the whorehouse is going. It's very satirical, and that's probably part of why it's so charming. The other half is the fact that it's, you know, playing up all Southern Texan stereotypes. But it is very satirical, and it gets it bang on in so many ways. You know, the crooked reporter who's just out to make a name for himself, and he doesn't really believe in any of the morality crusades he's on, but he just wants a story that's going to get the most eyes on him. And the governor who doesn't give a fuck about anything, he's just like, you know, this is what most people are going to say, and that's why I need to stay in power because I need votes, then I'm going with that. I don't care what it's what. And all the phony people in town who love the whorehouse and go to the whorehouse, but when shit hits the fan, all throw it under the bus.
Probably because they're like wives or girlfriends are like, you're not going to vote against it, aren't they? Like looking at them. But yeah, it's that's what I noticed about the film, Declan. It's like most people were in it for themselves, which is quite sad. But the film ends in quite a sad way.
So the whorehouse is closing down. Sheriff Ed and Miss Mona aren't talking to each other, but she had no idea basically that he went to the governor on the last day to try and plead as a last attempt to keep it open. And she's kind of, firstly, her heart is warmed the fact that he tried to even do that, but also then that he didn't even tell her that he tried to do that. But, you know, she still doesn't call him or contact him, and she just goes about her business. The whorehouse is closing down. All the girls have a little sing-song about what they might do now that they're not going to be whores anymore, at least not him. You know, one's going to go to Hollywood, one's going to fucking, I don't know, do whatever the fuck. Will probably be a whore in the next town.
In a bigger place, yeah, a better place, still moving on.
And everyone leaves, and on the last day, she's packing up her stuff and getting ready to go when the sheriff shows up to say goodbye.
Yeah, this is a very emotional scene because this is when Dolly drops the ultimate banger, I Will Always Love You. And I was like, I knew she sang it. Is it actually from, like, written for this film?
No, it was shoehorned in.
Yeah, I thought that because I remember her. Was it sung in another film though?
It's probably in loads of films.
Yeah, it's just shoehorned in, but it's still, even though it's shoehorned in there, it still did resonate quite well. I personally got a bit emotional.
To be honest, it fit like a glove.
Oh, please, don't cry. 'Cause we both know that I'm not what you need, but I will always love you. I will always love you.
It was actually perfect how it really did make sense to the plot and to the relationship between the characters at this point. I didn't remember the ending when I watched it this time, so they still dangled the possibility that they were just going to part ways and never see each other again long enough for you to get that feeling to really want them to be together, and then they do.
Yeah, because doesn't he tries to like propose to her in a shambolic kind of way, doesn't he? I wonder, did he actually think that, or he's just doing it as token gesture? I
think it was a token gesture, but I do think it was spur of the moment. Doesn't mean he didn't mean it, but it was spur of the moment. But
you talked about them drinking beer and shit when they're clearly like children. That doesn't bother me. We've always done that. But there's a scene earlier where it's like they're like lying down in the forest, isn't it, or whatever. It's like, I've loved you since I was 16 years old, and I was like, oh, a bit grey area, I suppose. It's
why? Mate, 16. You're fucking horny and want to fuck when you're like 30.
But how old was he? Well, she seems older than him. Maybe she's in the wrong.
Yeah, well, I don't know. But also, like, she doesn't say, I've loved fucking you since I was 10. She says, I loved you since I was 16. That could be a unrequited love he wasn't even aware of.
That's true. But I'm kind of glad that it ended in the way that they did. They've shoehorned a lot of shit in, and they could have very easily, like, shoehorned in, like, a quick marriage where you see him, like, but then he would have to divorce his wife, so that was bad. But I'm glad that you don't actually see him getting married. You just make your own conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't need to know, because it wasn't ambiguous. They told you by that goofy narrator comes in and says, like, they get married and this happens, and he just wraps everything up for you, which again, it's like, I don't need this douchebag. Like, I see him going off together on a carriage. He packs her stuff out of one carriage into his pickup. I know what's happening. Like, you don't need to fucking wrap it all up for me. But whatever, he comes in and says his bullshit.
The real victim in this whole sordid affair, which it literally is poor Sheriff Ed's actual wife
and kid. You never hear about what happens to him.
Kid, like, he's clearly married, they're having this affair, and then he goes with the top whore of the town. Like, you know?
It really is dehumanizing, like, how little she's not a person really, even in the film. She's just this background nothing who's like never featured. And that is, again, that's kind of what I love about this film.
What would you think if it didn't end like this? It was a kind of like, you know, there's all different ends of Blade Runner. They like drive over the hills, and she turns around and's like, no, I feel sorry for your wife, and then she goes off her separate way, and then Ed's kind of left there all like, you know, because I think he's on a power trip the whole time, basically.
Really, yeah.
He's the sheriff. He's leading her along in a way because he's married, and then he's left standing there as Dolly Parton goes off into the sunset by herself.
See, that ending I would hate, but if they did it like that, but not suddenly deciding that Sheriff Ed's a bad character at the last second out of nowhere, but instead that sort of Casablanca ending where, hey, not everything's about love, sometimes you got to do the right thing, blah blah blah, and they just, you know, they were like, look, we can't be together, you got a family, I'm a whore, I need to go off and whore and do my whore thing, and you need to raise your family, and ended like that, and it was handled nicely. I'd probably even prefer that ending, because I love a sad ending that leaves you wanting more.
Okay, we'll leave it as he's not a good person, he's not a bad person in terms of helping the whorehouse, but he's a very bad person to his wife.
Yeah, but I don't care about that. I just like him.
But yeah, no, leave him.
Do you recommend?
It's Burt Reynolds.
Do you recommend the best little whorehouse in Texas?
It's a difficult one for me. I'll tell the truth about it, Declan. I'm very adverse to musicals. I struggle with even more established musicals such as Grease. I've only seen that a few times, and I've watched it the first time through Gritty Tea. I don't personally recommend it due to not liking musicals, and watching this, it seemed like it was a musical for the sake of it already being a musical. Like as you said, Declan, you hit the nail on the head. The songs were very much an afterthought to me. Like, I was more intrigued in like the actual acting and the building up of their relationship and stuff like that. So I've struggled to recommend it. It's not a bad film, by the way. It's just the whole musical, and it seemed very forced. Even when like Burt Reynolds was singing, I was kind of like, don't know about this. So I'm going to say no, but simply just because of the whole musical element doesn't sit well with me as the genre in general, not the film critiquing it. it.
Yeah, I get you. I hate musicals too, generally. There's quite a few that I really like, and I would only recommend this to people who usually don't like musicals for the non-musical parts, essentially. If you aren't completely repulsed by musicals and you can get past those moments, then you'll probably find a really charming, hokey film that pretty much runs on star power. Like, it's a lovely story, but not the best script, not the best direction. Although Colin Higgins is a really good director. He did Harold and Maude, great film, isn't it? But I wasn't like blown over by the direction in the film. The script's not fantastic, but the actual film, there's just something about it that's very charming. If you like country music, if you like the deep South in America and southern states and that whole sort of vibe, then you'll get a real kick out of this. And it's got a lot of star power in it with Dolly Parton and Burt Reynolds among the rest of the cast. So with that in mind, I would give a very weak prefixed recommendation from this film to a very specific sort of film fan who doesn't like musicals but can get past musical moments in a film, and who likes southern films and Dolly Parton.
So me for some of it. Yeah.
So basically, I don't recommend this to 98% of the movie audience.
I mean, the first bit about not liking musicals but can see past it was me. The rest, no. Am I a normal person?
So come back now, you hear?